Rounded. Let's begin with the first and most overlooked truth. Objects are not neutral. Surrounded. Every item you bring into your home carries a kind of residue, not physical, but psychological, emotional, spiritual. We tend to think of our homes as safe spaces, personal sanctuaries where we can rest and reset. Surrounded. But what if I told you that many of the things sitting on your shelves, hanging on your walls, surrounded, or hiding in your closets are quietly shaping the emotional and spiritual atmosphere of your space, and not for the better? Rounded. Everything we interact with leaves an imprint. This is not mystical speculation. Surrounded, it's grounded in how human consciousness works. Psychologically, we are creatures of association. We attach memory, surrounded, emotion, and meaning to things. A wedding ring, for example, rounded, isn't just a piece of metal. It's loaded with sentiment, stories, and sometimes scars. Surrounded. That old jacket from a past relationship, it's not just fabric. It's a time capsule of who you were. Surrounded, what you felt, and what you endured while wearing it. Now, think beyond what you've personally experienced. Surrounded. Think about the unknown histories embedded in the objects we collect. Antiques, thrifted furniture, surrounded, inherited heirlooms, even souvenirs from a place you visited once and forgot about. Surrounded. These objects have their own stories, other people's energies, emotions, and possibly rounded traumas layered invisibly within them. When we bring those things into our homes, rounded, we don't just bring stuff. We bring remnants of environments, belief systems, sometimes even suffering. Surrounded. And unless we're intentionally cleansing or neutralizing that presence, we're inviting it to live among us. Surrounded. Philosophically, this intersects with the ancient idea that matter and meaning are not separate. Surrounded. In many traditions, from Eastern spiritual practices to early Christian mysticism, there's an understanding that physical objects can carry spiritual weight. Surrounded, not metaphorically, but actually. The ancient world treated objects with reverence or with caution for this reason. Rounded. Today, in our hyper-materialistic culture, we often ignore this entirely, and we do so at our own peril. Rounded. Let me give you a real example. Rounded. I once spoke with someone who couldn't sleep after purchasing a decorative mask from a market overseas. Nightmares. Surrounded. Tension in the home, even a strange heaviness in the air. Nothing in their life circumstances had changed. Rounded. But something in their environment had. Surrounded. It wasn't until the mask was removed and the house spiritually cleansed that peace returned. Now, rounded, you may call that coincidence. Surrounded. But ask yourself, how many coincidences have to happen before we start seeing a pattern? Surrounded. There's also the psychological toll of unconscious exposure. Surrounded. If your environment is filled with items that carry grief, tension, or unknown intention, your mind picks up on that. Rounded. Whether you realize it or not, your nervous system responds. Your sleep may become disrupted. Rounded. Your thoughts may become scattered, and your energy may start to drop, all without any clear explanation. Rounded. That's not imagination. That's your environment speaking. The solution isn't paranoia. It's awareness. Surrounded. Begin to look at your surroundings with honest eyes. Ask yourself, where did this come from? Why am I keeping it? Rounded. What energy or memory do I associate with it? If the answer leaves you uneasy, you already know what to do. Rounded. This isn't about superstition. It's about stewardship. You are the gatekeeper of your home. Rounded. And everything you allow inside either reinforces peace or invites chaos. The sooner we understand that, rounded, the more empowered we become to protect not just our space, but our state of mind. Let's go deeper. Surrounded. Because it's not just about objects with emotional history. It's also about the symbols we surround ourselves with. Rounded. Many of us have adopted certain decor, artwork, or imagery simply because it looked interesting, edgy, or exotic. Rounded. We saw it in a store, online, or at a friend's place and thought, rounded, that looks cool, without ever questioning what it actually represents. But here's the uncomfortable truth: carry power, and often far more than we realize. Now, rounded. I'm not suggesting that every decorative piece in your home is cursed or dangerous. That's not the point. Rounded. The point is that symbolism across history and culture has always held influence, whether through religion, rounded, mythology, tribal rites, or political movements. Symbols shape thought, rounded. They communicate meaning directly to the subconscious. Surrounded, they are psychological shortcuts, visual codes that bypass logic and speak straight to the primitive layers of the brain. Rounded, the same layers that govern instinct, emotion, and fear. Think about it. Why do we stop at a red octagon on the road? Surrounded. Why do logos trigger brand loyalty? Why do ancient civilizations invest so much in iconography, runes, amulets? Surrounded. Because symbols matter. Because they carry meaning, not just in the mind, but in the soul. Rounded. And if you fill your home with symbols you don't understand, rounded, you may unknowingly align yourself with energies and philosophies that run counter to the peace and clarity you're trying to create. Rounded. Let's take a few examples. Surmask, surrounded. Statues from cultures with animistic or ritualistic roots may have been created not as art, rounded, but as spiritual conduits used in summoning, warding, or sacrifice. Now stripped of their context, surrounded, they sit on a shelf in someone's living room, far from the culture that gave them meaning, rounded, but still vibrating with that same symbolic energy, rounded. And that energy doesn't dissipate just because we don't understand it. The same goes for inverted crosses, surrounded, certain geometric designs, or even modern art that glorifies chaos, suffering, or fragmentation. Surrounded, it's not about being superstitious. It's about recognizing what you're inviting into the architecture of your mind. Surrounded, because that's what your home is. It's an extension of your inner world. Every image on the wall, surrounded, every object on the table is communicating something to your subconscious every single day. It's telling a story, surrounded. The only question is, what kind of story is it telling? Rounded. This becomes even more serious when we talk about objects tied to the occult. Not just obscure symbols, rounded, but actual items designed for ritual use, tarot cards, Ouija boards, decorative, pentagrams, surrounded. Even if you see these things as harmless or artistic, remember that intent matters less than function. Rounded. These tools were not designed for aesthetic appeal. They were crafted to bridge spiritual realms. Rounded. And if you treat them casually, you risk opening spiritual doors you were never meant to walk through. Surrounded. Philosophically, this speaks to a deeper truth: nothing is truly neutral. Every object, every image, surrounded, every symbol, it's either aligned with order or chaos, light or darkness, truth or distortion. Surrounded. If you believe your environment doesn't influence your mental or spiritual state, surrounded, then you're underestimating the power of suggestion and the subtle language of symbolism that shapes our lives more than we like to admit. Rounded. This isn't about fear, it's about clarity. I'm encouraging you to become visually literate. Surrounded. To look around your home, not with paranoia, but with discernment. Ask yourself, do I know what this really means? Surrounded. What does it represent historically, spiritually, culturally? Rounded. And most importantly, does it align with the atmosphere I want to cultivate in this space? Surrounded. We don't need to live in fear of our decor, but we do need to stop living in ignorance of it. Surrounded. Because the images you normalize in your home eventually become the messages you internalize in your mind. Rounded. Let's explore an aspect of our environment that's often overlooked, but profoundly influential. Rounded. The media we consume and keep in our homes. Books, movies. Rounded. Music. The very stories and sounds that fill our daily lives. Surrounded. We tend to think of these things as mere entertainment, distractions from the grind of life. Rounded. But they are so much more than that. They are emotional and spiritual atmospheres in themselves. Surrounded. And they have the power to shape the very energy that permeates your home. Surrounded. When you bring a book or a movie into your space, you're not just adding a physical object. Surrounded. You're inviting the ideas, emotions, rounded, and vibrations embedded within that content to become part of your environment. Surrounded. This happens on both conscious and subconscious levels. Psychologically, our minds absorb narratives and emotions. Surrounded, even when we think we're just watching or reading. Philosophically, surrounded. Stories are vessels of meaning. They carry archetypes, fears, desires, and worldviews that seep into our psyche. Rounded. Consider horror movies or books that dwell on violence, death, or the occult. These aren't neutral stories. Rounded. They are saturated with fear, darkness, and unrest. When consumed regularly, surrounded, or when such media is visibly present in your living space, it acts like a subtle amplifier of these emotions. Surrounded. It primes your nervous system to be on edge, your imagination to dwell on shadows. Surrounded, and your spirit to be less resilient. You might find yourself more anxious, restless, or emotionally drained. Rounded. Even if you don't immediately make the connection, it's similar with music that glorifies pain, anger, or nihilism. Sound waves carry energy. Rhythms and lyrics imprint moods. Surrounded. If the soundtrack of your life is filled with despair or aggression, your emotional baseline shifts accordingly. Rounded. Over time, this energy accumulates and can weigh down the atmosphere of your home. Now, rounded. This is not about moral judgment or censorship. Surrounded. There's a place for exploring the darker sides of human experience through art and media. It's part of what makes us whole. Rounded. But the key word is balance. Surrounded. When your environment is saturated with unbalanced doses of negativity or spiritual unrest. Surrounded. It becomes fertile ground for what I call darkness. That creeping sense of heaviness, disconnection. Rounded. Or malaise that so many feel but struggle to explain. Even beyond horror or violent content. Surrounded. Consider media that subtly promotes disempowerment, hopelessness, or cynicism. Sometimes it's not overtly dark. Surrounded, but it carries a quiet poison. Stories where humans are helpless victims, where chaos reigns without resolution. Surrounded, or where love and hope are distant illusions. These narratives can shape your subconscious beliefs about life. Surrounded, safety, and your own inner strength. And if they are allowed to linger in your environment, surrounded, they become part of your home's energetic signature. Surrounded. What many don't realize is that this influence is cumulative. Surrounded. It's not just the movie you watched once or the book you skimmed through. Rounded. It's the layering of these energies, the repeated exposure that erodes your mental and spiritual defenses. Rounded, your home becomes a gallery of emotional echoes, and some of those echoes attract what I describe as darkness. Rounded, there's also a practical side to this. When you notice feelings of unease, tension, surrounded, or fatigue in your living space, look around and ask, what am I feeding this space? Surrounded, what stories and sounds am I allowing to linger? Often, surrounded, the media we keep reflects parts of ourselves that we may not want to face. Surrounded, but it's worth asking whether they serve our highest good. The invitation here is clear. Surrounded, curate your media as you would curate a garden. Surrounded, remove the content that disturbs your peace or stokes fear unnecessarily. Replace it with narratives that uplift, rounded, inspire, and restore your sense of purpose. Rounded. This isn't about avoiding reality. It's about choosing what kind of reality you want to nurture in your home and mind. Surrounded. Remember, your home is not just where you live, it's where your spirit takes root. Rounded. The stories you invite in become the soil from which your emotional and spiritual life grows. Tend that soil wisely. Rounded. Now, let's consider something deeply personal, the objects we hold on because of their emotional significance. Surrounded, especially those tied to trauma or toxic relationships. These items might seem harmless on the surface. Surrounded, a piece of clothing, a gift from an ex, a memento from a painful chapter in your life. Rounded. But beneath that surface lies a weight that most people never fully acknowledge. Surrounded. These objects are not just reminders, they are energetic anchors. Rounded, tethering you to a past you desperately need to move beyond. Psychologically, surrounded. Trauma isn't confined to the mind alone. It imprints on your body, your emotions, and crucially, your environment. Surrounded. When you keep physical items associated with toxic or painful experiences, surrounded, you are essentially inviting that trauma to live with you. Rounded, it occupies space in your home and in your psyche simultaneously. Rounded, this makes healing exponentially harder because the past is never truly behind you. It's always present. Surrounded, literally in your sight and reach. Philosophically, surrounded, this touches on the concept of attachment and the nature of suffering. Eastern philosophies, for example, rounded, teach that clinging to the past is a root cause of ongoing pain. Yet in our modern lives, rounded, clinging often takes the form of holding onto things loaded with emotional history that replay old wounds every time we see or touch them. Rounded, the home, ideally a place of refuge and renewal, becomes instead a gallery of grief, regret, and unresolved conflict. Surrounded, we tend to underestimate how these objects affect the subtle energies in our living space. Rounded, it's not just sentimentality, it's a form of unconscious self-sabotage. Each time you pass by that item, rounded, your mind and spirit are reminded of the hurt, anger, or betrayal tied to it. This triggers emotional responses. Surrounded, sometimes so faint you hardly notice, but cumulatively, they drain your vitality and cloud your inner peace. Surrounded. Imagine this: you have a sweater that belonged to a former partner who caused you pain. You don't wear it anymore. Surrounded, but it's folded neatly in your drawer, untouched for months. Yet its presence subtly shifts your energy. Surrounded, you might feel inexplicable sadness or tension in that corner of the room. Maybe you find it harder to relax around it, or you wake with uneasy dreams. These aren't coincidences. Surrounded, they are echoes of unresolved emotional energy lodged in the material world. On a practical level, surrounded, holding onto these tokens often reflects an unconscious hope that by keeping the object surrounded, you can somehow control or make peace with the past. But true healing requires release. Rounded, it's not about erasing memories or denying what happened. It's about creating space, mental, emotional, surrounded, and physical, where new life can grow, free from the shadows of what once was. Surrounded, Clearing these items from your home is an act of radical self-care. It's a way of telling yourself, rounded, and the universe that you are ready to move forward, rounded. It's a declaration that your home will no longer be a museum of pain, but a sanctuary of renewal, rounded. Philosophers and psychologists alike recognize the power of physical space in shaping mental states, rounded. Our environments are extensions of our minds. By curating what you allow to remain in your home, rounded, you curate your inner world. This is not a superficial change, but a profound one. So, the challenge is this: surrounded. Look honestly at what you keep. Identify the objects tied to toxic memories or painful chapters, rounded. If they do not serve your healing, if they keep you tethered to darkness instead of light, surrounded, it's time to remove them. You don't have to destroy these things. Sometimes simply giving them away, donating, rounded, or storing them out of sight can break their hold on you. Remember, your home is more than a physical shelter, surrounded. It is the vessel of your soul's rest and rejuvenation. Let go of what weighs you down, surrounded, because the things you keep are not just possessions. They're the chains that bind your spirit. Break free, rounded, and reclaim your space. Let's close this exploration with something many of us wrestle with daily. Clutter, rounded. At first glance, clutter seems like a mundane, even trivial issue. Misplaced keys, piles of unopened mail, rounded, random objects accumulating on tables and floors. But clutter is far more than a physical inconvenience, surrounded. It's an energetic phenomenon that directly affects the atmosphere of your home and, by extension, around it, your mind and spirit. Clutter is chaos made tangible. It's disorder turned physical, rounded. When your living space is cluttered, surrounded, it's not just your surroundings that suffer, your cognitive and emotional states do too. Psychologically, surrounded, clutter overloads your brain. Studies show that messy environments increase stress hormones, lower focus, surrounded, and even reduce willpower. But beyond the science, there's a deeper, more subtle truth. Surrounded, clutter blocks the flow of energy, what some traditions call chi or prana. This energy is essential for vitality, rounded, creativity, and peace. Philosophically, clutter represents resistance. It's a refusal to let go, surrounded, a holding on to what no longer serves you. In many spiritual teachings, surrounded, stagnation is the breeding ground for darkness. When energy can't move freely, it stagnates and turns heavy, surrounded, creating fertile soil for negativity, fear, and depression to take root. Your home then becomes not a sanctuary, rounded, but a cage. Think about how you feel when you walk into a cluttered room. There's often an invisible weight, surrounded, a subtle sense of being overwhelmed or trapped. You might find it harder to breathe deeply or relax, surrounded. The chaos of the environment seeps into your nervous system, rounded, triggering a stress response even before you consciously register it. It's exhausting, and over time, rounded, it erodes your emotional resilience. Beyond personal feelings, surrounded, clutter can attract actual darkness in the metaphysical sense. In many spiritual traditions, rounded, darkness isn't just about evil or malevolent forces. It's about the absence of light and movement. Rounded, dark energy gathers where there is neglect, dirt, and disorder. Dust settles, corners go unseen, rounded, and the space becomes a magnet for low vibrations. That's why regular cleaning, organizing, rounded, and purging aren't just chores. They are spiritual practices. But let's be clear, rounded, decluttering isn't about perfection or minimalism for its own sake. Surrounded, it's about creating a living environment that supports your well-being. It's about making room for light, rounded, for joy, for growth. It's about giving yourself permission to breathe freely in your own space. Surrounded. This also ties into the psychological concept of boundary setting. When you allow clutter to accumulate rounded, you're often unconsciously signaling a lack of boundaries with yourself, your time, your emotional energy. Rounded. By clearing clutter, you reclaim control. You establish that your home is a place of order, peace, rounded, and intentionality. And here's a powerful insight: decluttering is a form of self-love. Surrounded. When you clean and organize, you send a message to your mind and soul that you are worth care and respect. Surrounded. You're telling yourself that the space you inhabit matters. This shift can ripple out into other areas of life. Rounded. Strengthening your ability to set healthy boundaries and make positive choices. So if you're feeling weighed down, surrounded, stuck, or restless in your home, look closely at the state of your environment. Surrounded. What is clutter telling you about your inner world? What might it be hiding or blocking? Rounded. Take the courageous step to clear away what no longer serves you, both physically and energetically. Rounded. Because in the end, darkness finds a home where light does not move. Let your space be a place of flow, clarity, surrounded, and vitality. Clear the clutter, and you clear the way for your life to flourish.